Hey guys, happy Tuesday, officially Tuesday, and welcome to the Fox 5 Live Zone. I'm your host, Guy Lambert. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Coming up on the show today, more than 1 billion people continue to mourn the death of the Pope. The funeral now set for Saturday. We have the latest. Could a member of Trump's cabinet be on the way out the door? Maybe so. We'll break it down during politics. And dare I say, it's what not to do if and when you are ghosted. We'll chat about it during our Tuesday Talkers right here on the Live Zone. But first, how about we drop it like it's hot? Weather-wise, Tucker Barnes joining us right here on the Live Zone. I heard you making reference to that song earlier today, my friend.
I did, and I was recalling my glory days when that song was fresh. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
how's the weekend?
It was good. How was yours?
Yes, it was great. Easter weekend.
Spent
it with my wife's family, and
there you go.
There's a lot of energy over there.
Okay.
Can't keep up.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure you dropped it like it's hot.
Tried to. Felt like it was hot. All right, it's gonna feel like it's hot this afternoon too, as we're warming up again. Low 80s this afternoon, and we will be talking about dry conditions. So don't worry about your rain for your Tuesday afternoon. In fact, probably no rain until the end of the week. Maybe by Friday into Saturday. We'll start to get some showers back in the region. 75 for your early afternoon hours, 72 Dulles. Clouds being reported, well, partly cloudy skies being reported across the region. Had a frontal system that was working through the region. In fact, it still is working through the region. I'll show it to you here on the satellite. And it will bring us some occasional cloud cover. So showers mostly down at the beaches, down even south of Ocean City at this hour. And will continue to fade off and away from our area later this afternoon and over the next 12 hours. So see the clouds out to the west, out in the mountains. Some of those will sneak across, and will be partly sunny this afternoon. But 10 degrees above average temperature-wise and dry. The exception to an otherwise really nice weather pattern, pollen has been very high for trees. So later this afternoon when you're out and about, I want you to go find an oak tree or a sycamore tree or a birch tree and blame them, because they're the main guys that are causing the issues right now. Okay, looking down the road, I mentioned quiet conditions. Wednesday we look great. Thursday we look good. By Friday we'll get more clouds, and we probably will have some showers at some point Friday into Saturday. So that will be our time frame for our next chance for some rain. Temps over the next 6 to 10, 8 to 14 days look to be above normal. Our average high is 70.
Oh, wow.
So could we say our first 90 of the year?
Could we?
Maybe next week.
Huh.
Maybe next week. We have some high 80s in the forecast by the middle of next week. The next 7 days, all above average, with the exception of Sunday and Monday, which is close to average. So we'll keep it generally on the warmer side of things next couple days. Rain there Friday to Saturday, but 81 this afternoon.
Man, I'm absolutely loving this.
Good.
Can we just put this on repeat, like forever?
Well, we pretty much will until September, October.
Okay.
Only, we're going to continue to turn up the drop it like it's hot.
I love it. All right, Tucker Barnes with all things weather right here on the Live Zone. Guys, please make sure you download the Fox Local app. That way, that hot forecast, you can take it with you any and everywhere you go. All right, guys, on the top right-hand side of your screen, we are awaiting a press conference by the State Department. Word is they are launching a major reorganization of its operations. That's due to get underway any minute now, and when that happens, we'll take you there. Obviously, on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, the White House. Yes, a White House press conference with Caroline Leavitt set to get underway beginning at 1 o'clock. Yet again, when either one of those starts, we'll take you there live right here on the Live Zone. Speaking of politics, President Trump defended Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth after reports that the Pentagon chief used a second signal group chat to discuss classified military plans. Now, the Defense Secretary remained defiant this morning, insisting that fired officials leaked that information. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Mr. ARIF HALABY. He is a part of 870 AM and obviously a financial solutions guru. Always good to see you, sir. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Because you can see I'm driving. Of course, we have somebody driving, so I'm safe.
Okay. Wanted to make sure you're the passenger, not the driver. As long as that's happening,
I am,
you're good
yes.
to go. Yet again, you heard me just make mention we are awaiting a press conference from the State Department. Word is they are launching a major reorganization of its operations. A lot of folks curious as to what this will entail. I'm curious on my end, and a lot of folks watching are wondering as well. What do you think is going to happen with this?
Well, I'll tell you what, the 47 presidents we've had, precedent is everything. It's why you hear the Supreme Court operate off of precedent. You hear presidents continually operate off of precedent. And one of the biggest issues is under Hillary Clinton, under the Obama campaign with Hillary Clinton, the amount of information that was taken, we now know some classified sources have leaked that China, Russia, and even at least two that we know of, allies, had real-time data access to her servers. That's why everybody was given immunity, from the IT, 20-year-old IT person all the way through. My point is, you don't fire somebody if there's a mistake. You fire somebody if there's an illegal issue that's taking place, criminal, bribe, misdemeanors, those kinds of things. Of course, we would terminate. But Hegseth, it's a huge organization. We know there are people that are put in place 2, 3, 4, 5 layers deep to undermine the Trump agenda. We know that. It's always been the case. It was the case last time. It's deeper this time. So where the leaks came from, what the issues were, I think we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, yet again, that press conference set to get underway any minute now. I can tell you I see a number of the press taking their seat. When that happens, typically it's due to start in a minute or two. I want to get this in prior to us taking that live, and that is one of the big stories of the day. The IMF saying the U.S. and global economic outlook has significantly worsened in the wake of President Trump's tariffs. All this as the Dow Jones is now on track to have one of the worst Aprils since the Great Depression. Your take on that, sir?
Well, the reality is the tariffs actually haven't physically impacted the nation yet, in any nation across the country. You're seeing the tariffs on a regular basis be a communication issues. Well, you might even say it's a negotiation tactic. And here's the reason why. We've had tariffs from Canada against the United States for decades. They're our closest neighbor. There's no real issues. American farmers have been hit over and over again with wheat tariffs to Central America and Europe. I think the tariffs, I think it's a short-term issue. 42% of Americans have money in the stock market. Most people don't really feel it the way that you and I might if we have a little bit of money there. I think you're going to see over and over again, this is more of a messaging issue. It will be impacted shortly. And the biggest key here, this is the takeaway that most of us don't understand. The biggest key is to bring back normalcy, meaning when China and the United States can trade across the board, I think you'll see the U.S. return, to a manufacturing haven, really.
ARIF, I want to talk about a story that's affecting us here locally. The Maryland man who currently remains imprisoned in El Salvador. We know that Democratic lawmakers traveled to El Salvador and, well, they're now stating that they were denied to see Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Democrats are worried the focus on due process obviously won't land well with voters, as Republicans on the flip side, well, they're leaning in to make his case a debate over illegal immigration. What do you see it as?
Well, there's different types of Americans, some that come here, some that are born first generation like myself. My dad came here legally in the 60s. I think you'll see that the naming and the words, a Maryland man. If I was a Maryland man, if I lived there, do you understand how insulted I would be to compare myself to a person who has MS-13 tattooed across his hands, who has legitimately been convicted and accused on numerous occasions of wife beating, of somebody who absolutely is a gang member, nearly almost 11 years on the Los Angeles Police Department. Back in the 1980s, we were arresting MS-13 in Southern California. It was a regular occurrence. I can tell you from across the room, anybody with any intelligence can look at it and understand the difference between an immigrant, they come and they go. Migrant, come and go. No, illegal. He came illegally. Let's call it what it is. He's an illegal immigrant. He was escaping 18th Street gang, which is also, of course, a Los Angeles gang. He was escaping 18th Street gang because they had transplanted to El Salvador. We understand this. The difference is that gang no longer exists. So do you understand? It's like the Crips saying, I want free, I want to go into witness protection because the Bloods are after me. It doesn't make sense. 18th Street doesn't exist in El Salvador anymore.
I'm playing devil's advocate here, and we know that Maryland Senator Van Hollen had the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Abrego Garcia. He then stated that he's not speaking to the credibility of the man. What he's speaking to is due process, and that's what so many others are saying. Does it boil down to that?
So if you think due process, you think he's had his time in front of a judge. Mr. Abrego Garcia, 2 times in front of a judge. Do you understand? Twice. He was found in both immigration court and he was found in a secondary court and asked and denied both times. the court has secured him and laid him out to be, through testimony, through cross testimony, through obvious evidence, that he is a gang member. I mean, that's very important you understand this. He's not escaping any other gang member. He has been given not just one, but 2 times to appeal his case in front of a judge. They're mad because he's a father. I get it. Prisons are filled with fathers. I understand that. They're filled with mothers, sons and daughters. That doesn't excuse the action of a person who comes here to abuse women. And can you think for just a second, who is messaging the Democrat Party? Who tells them that this is the hill to die on? They should be hugging and surrounding themselves with victims. Instead, they sat there in the quasi State of the Union address by President Trump. They didn't stand for a young black man who was a young black child who had cancer and was fighting it. They didn't stand for victims of domestic violence, of illegal immigrants. They sat there. Look, I used to be a Democrat. I can tell you, you have to understand something. Whoever is messaging them has got it all wrong. I can't figure out why they think this is important.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see yet again how all of this unfolds. National story, but affects so many folks locally right here in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. It is now 12:11. Yet again, we are awaiting a press briefing by the State Department. That should happen any minute now. I want to revert back to Mr. Hegseth, and we know that he remains defiant amid the Signal chat controversy, and yet again insisting fired officials leak the information. You too made that statement. Hegseth also confirmed the existence of a second Signal group chat, members to which included his wife, his brother, and personal lawyer, in which he shared sensitive military operation details. As for President Trump, is it too important to him to, or is it very important to him rather, to keep his name and keep his pride, if you will, in shining in light versus admitting to making a mistake that perhaps he hired the wrong man?
Oh, I can give you 5 different people that President Trump terminated during his time in office in his 4 years. How many people can you give me that Joe Biden fired? 0. None. So you're telling me those men and women never made a mistake? Of course they did. Pete Hegseth, whether he personally made a mistake, whether there's an issue, 1, no lives were at risk. Number 2 is now we know that the chat was, that somebody was added to the chat by a disgruntled employee on purpose to add the journalist. That's important you understand that there are layers and layers of people that are out to get you. Look, sometimes people are paranoid. I get it. You may even on occasion accuse President Trump of being a little bit paranoid, but you're not paranoid when they spent 10 years trying to get him. They know everything about President Trump. If they can find a way to call away some of his big supporters like Pete Hegseth, and let's be clear, Pete is probably one of the best men for the job for men and women in uniform. And I have somebody in my family that's in uniform right now. I was very concerned under the last administration because that's when that person joined. Now, not concerned at all. And this is a close family member that I would do anything for. And you understand that I have no concern whatsoever.
ARIF will end with this, and that is the Education Secretary says that she spoke with Harvard University and Columbia University about abiding by the law, insisting the Trump administration's recent demands are not about freedom of speech. Now, yesterday, as many of us know, Harvard sued the administration over the government's funding freeze, calling it, quote, unlawful and beyond the government's authority. Does Harvard have a leg to stand on?
No, 0 legs to stand on for 2 reasons. 1, they accept federal money in different avenues. They accept it in student loans. It's why Hillsdale College, one of the top colleges, independent colleges, doesn't have to listen to government mandates because they don't accept government money. When you take student loan money, that means the government, you and I, the taxpayers, are paying for men and women to attend college there. Then there are strings attached. Tough luck. That's the way it goes. The second avenue is research. And Harvard has continually asked for money for research. They think they're entitled to it. They are not. They are a college university. Harvard has almost 200 years of tuition for every man, woman, and child saved in their endowment. Do you realize how powerful that is? 200 years, a student never has to pay for any college, any cost, any lab fees, any parking fees, and that is sitting in Harvard's tax-free endowment. That means you and I are paying for it when it's tax-free. You understand that? That means we have to pay to offset those taxes.
It's a very interesting scenario and something that I'm pretty sure a lot of folks want to get to the bottom of and or discover as they just have right here on this show. If folks want to get a chance to listen to you, how could they go about to do so?
Oh, every Sunday from 12 to from 11 to 1 on Pacific Coast time. AM 870 The Answer. Go to AM 870 The Answer in Los Angeles. Here every week.
Well, when it comes to safety while in the car, you definitely have the answer, sir, wearing that seatbelt. Mr. ARIF
Thank
HALABY,
you.
870 AM, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Truly appreciate your time, sir.
Appreciate you. Be well.
All right. Obviously, yet again, we still are awaiting that press conference from the State Department. Should happen any minute now. And when that does, we'll take you there live. Now to a Fox 5 health alert. Virginia health leaders are tracking the state's first case of measles this year and working to determine who may be at risk. Now, according to officials, the infected patient is a child up to 4 years old who recently traveled internationally prior to testing positive. The Virginia Department of Health says a particular Kaiser Permanente location in Northern Virginia is one of 2 healthcare centers the infected young patient visited late last week. That visit, by the way, happened to be April 15th between 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. Joining us to discuss this is Dr. David Shaker, Shaker Medical Group, back here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, Dr. Shaker.
You as well, Guy. Get that. Thanks, Beyond.
All right, let's jump right into this. Yet again, I got to tell you, this is truly concerning. A lot of parents, just folks in general, very concerned. This is a reoccurring issue. I feel as if this happens to be the 3rd or 4th time we have had this discussion, and that is a child who didn't happen to be vaccinated, well, now infected with measles.
It's turning into a little bit of an old story at this point. We've come on a bunch of times. We've discussed the recommendations. We've discussed the vaccinations. We've discussed the safety around them. We've spoken about the ongoing, well, let's call it hoopla or just extra research going into it. At the end of the day, science doesn't care if you believe in it or not. Science is going to perform the way science is expected. In this particular case, we're going to assume that the case is an unvaccinated person. And the spread, unfortunately, is very high to other people that are unvaccinated. We think something around 90%, and we think it can linger in a facility or the air for quite some time. Now, if you are vaccinated, we actually don't think there's a concern. About 97% effect of the vaccination, so long as you've gotten 2 doses, and definitely above 90% if you've gotten 1 dose. If you want to call into question the amount of cases that we have regularly, it's in 2024, Maryland had 1 case. In 2023, they had 1 case, and Virginia had 1 case as well. So it's common to see 1 or 2 cases throughout the year. It doesn't necessarily have to play into it. And if we think that this person has traveled, it may not be essentially from the state that it was, but just from being out of the country.
Interesting. Yet again, the health officials now stating that that child visited the Kaiser Permanente location Tuesday, April 15th, between 10 a.m. and 1:30. A lot of folks are probably saying, hey, did I happen to be at that vicinity or within that vicinity during that time? To which you would say what? If that is the case, should they too be concerned?
So I'll pause and say, like, let's look at the vaccination rates, right? In Virginia, you have about a 94% vaccination rate. DC, about 92, and Maryland, 97% vaccination rate. So if you visited one of those areas that the Department of Health has published, but you are vaccinated, then you have very little to worry about. If you're unvaccinated, I have a different claim. I think that you actually should be quite concerned because of the rate of spread is very high. So what symptoms are you looking for? You're looking for pretty high fevers, up to about 104. You're looking for red, watery eyes. We call it conjunctivitis, cough, runny nose. And then we have something called Koplik spots, where you can get in the mouth about white or blue hue. And then as a rash starts to come from the neck down, those spots will resolve. All of that is pretty significant for measles. Usually you get the rash around day 3 to 5, and that's what the telltale signs are.
Dr. Shaker will end with this, and that is, yet again, there are some who still don't believe in the vaccination, still are somewhat skeptical.
Yeah.
What would you say to those folks?
I'd say with a polite plea that the vaccination is safe. There's a lot of research behind it if someone bothers to look at it. And in terms of further research being done, it doesn't necessarily bother me as a physician. Generally in medicine, we publish studies to be reproducible. As in, if I create a study, someone else should be able to produce the same study with the same outcomes. In this case, you're re-looking at studies, you're doing further studies. The end result is this is going to come out with the same outcome, and that the vaccine is safe, doesn't cause any adverse effects in terms of the long term, without using any popular political buzzwords. But that it's safe, it's effective, and it's something we've eliminated many decades ago. We don't necessarily have to go back to that place.
Yet again, Dr. David Shaker, Shaker Medical Group, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Truly appreciate your time, sir.
Take care, guys.
All right. Well, when it comes to donating foreign aid throughout the world, the United States has led the way. However, that may very well soon change. That alone is a major concern to the International Rescue Committee, or IRC, a humanitarian aid organization that works to help people whose lives and livelihoods have been shattered by conflict and disaster. For them, there is still a need for those that are in dire need. Joining us to discuss this is Mr. Kurian Donnelly. He is the Senior Vice President, the International Programs at International Rescue Committee. Sir, good to see you and welcome to the show.
Great, thanks for having me on.
So, this is somewhat confusing. This is somewhat, a lot of folks would argue that they have been led to believe that this is not an issue, and that is the aid or the amount of aid that the U.S. continues to provide to a number of foreign nations. I'm hoping you could shed some light, sir, as to why this is so important for the U.S. to continue to do.
I think it's important to establish, first of all, some of the facts around U.S. foreign assistance, which has long been a bipartisan area of support in terms of government policy. The U.S. provides about 40% of humanitarian aid around the world, or historically has provided that. But that comes at a cost of less than 1%, only a fraction of a percent to the U.S. taxpayer in terms of U.S. federal funding. And in return for that, the U.S. gets an incredible return on its investment, both in terms of the human impact of that investment around the world, lives saved, livelihoods provided to people in some of the most acute humanitarian disaster zones around the world, but also in terms of the U.S.'s reputation around the world as a force for good, a force for stability, a force for prosperity around the world.
I'm so glad you touched on it. We know that children are suffering as food from hardworking American farmers literally sits idle in warehouses. Preventable tragedies, I'm thinking deaths that are treatable diseases, are occurring daily. This is proof in the pudding that this is the real deal and something that needs to be addressed.
One of the most impactful programs that the IRC delivers around the world is treatment for acute malnutrition. This is for children under the age of 5 who are suffering from the worst forms of malnourishment. They require intensive care treatment, round-the-clock care, and that can be provided with specialized food products, specialized feeding products, including what we call ready-to-use therapeutic food, RUTF, which is basically a high-protein paste, often made from peanuts and various other ingredients, many of which are manufactured in the U.S., some manufactured around the world. We operate 42 what we call stabilization centers. These are intensive care units where kids get round-the-clock care around the world with support historically from the U.S. government. But with the volatility in U.S. foreign assistance, with the cuts that have been announced by the administration, the future of those stabilization centers is now very much at risk. We've been working to mobilize funds from other donors to ensure continuity of care, but we're incredibly worried at the prospect of having to close those centers, which are really a lifeline for hundreds of kids in the communities in which we operate them, in places like Nigeria, in places like Sudan, places like Afghanistan around the world, where the impacts of conflict and the impact on livelihoods has meant that for many families, they just simply can't provide for their children.
Mr. Donnelly, we'll have to leave it there. Yet again, we truly appreciate your time. I have to get to this press conference from the State Department. Thank you so much for coming on the Live Zone.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as stated, we are awaiting a press conference, and apparently it is now underway. Let's take you live to the State Department with the U.S. State Department spokesperson, Tammy Bruce.
He has issued the following statement on the plan, which you can get at State Department DEPT, or how is it, .gov? State.gov is where you can get this statement and links to other information on what we're about to discuss. We are facing tremendous challenges across the globe to deliver on President Trump's America First foreign policy. We must make the State Department great again. In its current form, the department is bloated, bureaucratic, and unable to perform its essential diplomatic mission in this new era of great power competition. Over the past 15 years, the department's footprint has had unprecedented growth and costs have soared. But far from seeing a return to investment, taxpayers have seen less effective and less efficient diplomacy. The sprawling bureaucracy created a system more beholden to radical political ideology than advancing America's core national interests. That is why today Secretary Rubio is announcing a comprehensive reorganization plan that will bring the department into the 21st century. This approach will empower the department from the ground up, from the bureaus to the embassies. Region-specific functions will be consolidated to increase functionality, redundant offices will be removed, and non-statutory programs that are misaligned with America's core national interests will cease to exist. Under President Trump's leadership, we have a commander-in-chief committed to putting America and Americans first. As his Secretary of State, Secretary Rubio, announces that he is in fact confident a reformed State Department will meet the moment and help make our country great once again. So the bottom line here is that these sweeping changes will empower our talented diplomats to put America and Americans first. It is also, I will remind, for those of you who are in the bullpen and those watching at home, as I've mentioned before, there's a number of journalists and organizations that are a member of our bullpen. They're people who cover the State Department and work here in the building. We had a discussion earlier today with some more background on this, that also for State Department personnel, everyone in the building will be receiving, of course, this statement. And there's an opinion piece that is available from the Secretary at the new State Department Substack link, and that is statedept.substack.com. Is that it? Go there, and it will ask if you want to subscribe. You don't have to. You can just click on the title, and you'll get additional commentary from the Secretary in this regard. Also, for everyone in this building, there is additional information. There is a fact sheet. There are frequently asked questions. There's an additional statement from the Deputy Secretary Landau, so you will be able to see that as well. And as a reminder again, because I know there's been a lot of fake news out there, this is a reorganization plan. It is not something where people are being fired today. They're not, no one's going to be walking out of the building. It's not that kind of a dynamic. It is a roadmap. It's a plan. It is something that there's been a congressional notice that has been sent. And so the steps and the procedures that happen through the government are also taking place at this point as well. And at this stage, I will open it up for questions on this issue. Yeah, yes?
Sure.
Sean?
Thanks. If you don't mind, just obviously lots of questions. Just to make sure we
Of
get
course.
to it. The Russians are saying that Special Envoy Witkoff is coming back.
All right, so we're doing, that's a
wanna
different
stick-
issue. Let's stick with this. It's interesting, if none of you have any questions about this.
No, we certainly have questions.
Yeah, so I mean
can say-
questions about this, and then of course I know, Lord knows, there's many other things that are happening as well.
I guess.
All right, yes, go ahead.
Just on the hiring freeze and the way that this affects the folding in of USAID to
Sure.
the State Department, how, given the fact that these people are not considered State Department employees, what opportunities, if any, are going to be given to them to be able to reapply or
Sure.
not for their position?
Sure, first of all, the USAID fold-in, that in a way is kind of the genesis of this, right? We knew that was going to happen. USAID was going to become a part of the State Department. And in this framework, what you'll see, and it makes, I think, perfect sense, and people seeing this will see that it makes sense, is that instead of this monolithic entity that was, its own object in Washington, D.C., making decisions about aid and where the money would go, the usual experience, and I've experienced this with the Secretary's travels and his conversations with the leaders and also our own embassy and consulate staffs, is that you would have donations or funding for a project that the country itself was not interested in or did not want and had other needs, that the embassy staff or the ambassador was never consulted, that the opinions of the people who are working in the country were not consulted. So they would see money going into a nation, as an example, put in to fund something that was even, in some cases, detrimental to the nation that we were working with, or opposed by an ambassador, and yet there was no input and no action. In this particular kind of reorg, it's about consolidating things, right? Weaving certain offices into other bureaus, making situations smaller, reorganizing it, literally. And in that case, you will see the bureaus, which used to have a lot of power, but had really kind of lost that in a certain way through the the giant bureaucracy that became evident through the 70s and 80s and 90s. And that you would have a dynamic now where the intention is, and described in this plan, to have each regional bureau have the element of the U.S. aid that is relevant to that bureau, so that they would be working together, and it would be a coalition, if you will, of ideas and minds and efforts to then also bring in and have the embassies, the ambassadors, and the governments who are working with having a say in making sure that the money that's donated is relevant to that nation, is relevant to the region. And that's what will be, that's where U.S. aid essentially is going, is into positions where, as I've mentioned to you, as we were doing our review of U.S. aid, is don't mistake a change for being something for indicating something is gone or missing. That it was never about us abandoning our commitment to funding to any kind of life-saving efforts or our work with other nations in assisting them. But it was going to look different, and now it will. But it will not just look different, but it's actually going to be within a functional framework to make sure that any aid that goes out is aid that the nation, that we work with the nation on, that we work with the embassies on, and people on the ground with an interest who are stakeholders will have a say in that. I think that that's certainly a much more functional way to move foreign aid through.
But on the employees themselves,
Oh,
that
sure.
were already sort of in limbo in terms of how their jobs
Sure.
were going to change when the department was going to be taking over
Sure.
USAID. Are those employees going to have the opportunities to apply for other positions? How many
Well,
people?
some will. So again, this is a proposal. This obviously could change. But as you have offices that are cut, or even some bureaus that were set up for a specific situation that end up being cut entirely, that you will have people who then, Foreign Service officers, the career workers, et cetera, being able to apply for something else. So these are, it's a dynamic where you've got a certain number of open seats that exist, and then people who, of course, will then be out of the seat where they were if, in fact, their office is cut or even folded in to another bureau. So these are, again, this is, again, a roadmap, and it's a dynamic, whereas we've said in the past certain dynamics where people, and this is new for me as somebody who's never worked for government, very much in a way like the military, where you can be working for the State Department, working in a specific, let's say, embassy overseas, and then that job ends, and then you come home and you get slotted into a new job. That, I think, for the American people, maybe for large corporations, that makes sense. But that's how it works here, when, of course, that's possible. So that is possible, and we will clearly watch that as it plays out. Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Tammy. You said things will look different, and thank you for that
Sure.
response. But I think a lot of people around the world will be wondering what it is, especially perhaps in the Middle East, Africa, what it will actually mean for them on the ground. How will these changes take effect? Will we see offices over there that are being closed, consulates and so on? Can you talk a little bit about what people around the world can actually expect?
Well, I can't speak to, it's a very separate issue, right? This is an organizational roadmap for this department here, right, in Washington, D.C. The arguments about what will occur in other countries, you're talking about embassies and consulates, that's not addressed here. It's not a factor that this reorg doesn't affect them, except, as I've mentioned, is more involvement, right? More direct, person-to-person framework, as opposed to bureaucracy to bureaucracy. No more calling up USAID and going through, 17 messages and trying to get an answer back about what's happening with a certain grant or what's happening with a certain plan. That this is really, in a way that I think I've heard many people here note, including the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary, of returning the State Department to its traditional base, to the nature of human diplomacy, of getting things done, and my goodness, especially in the 21st century, that move so rapidly, faster than any other time in history. And this is what the State Department used to be able to do. It has grown, as the Secretary's statements indicated, quite bloated, unable to move, stuck in really just a bloated inability bureaucratically to make decisions or to get things done. And if decisions are made, the levels that have to be gone through extend the amount of time to where you can get a decision made. So I would say for embassies and consulates in the world itself, as they're already seeing when it comes to the way that President Trump operates, the way that Secretary Rubio operates, it's about faster results with, I think, a more nimble effort. All right. Yes, Humaira.
Thank you, Tammy. So in the reorg, we see that the Undersecretary for Civilian Security, Democracy, Human Rights, as known as J inside the State Department, seems to have been eliminated, and some of the bureaus under that is being brought under different undersecretaries. But for example, Office of Global Criminal Justice, which works on monitoring atrocities overseas, which cooperates with different governments on war crimes accountability, seems to be completely eliminated. So I'm wondering, this undersecretariat was a place where U.S. basically did democracy and rights promotion globally. Does the new State Department under President Trump no longer sees that as a mission? Is that no longer a priority?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a legitimate question. Again, we've grown used to seeing something, and then that would indicate that's where that lives, and if that's gone, the effort is gone. You know, many times during the USAID argument, I've made that argument. Just because the USAID building was going to be something else doesn't mean, or that the certain aid was cut that was not aligned with our vision or President Trump's vision, doesn't mean that our commitment to foreign aid ended. So you're right. There are going to be certain offices and certain bureaus that are going to be gone or folded into other bureaus. I would say this is one of the most important aspects of this for everyone in the building and everyone watching at home. Because you might have had a specific bureau that dealt with a discrete issue, doesn't mean because it's now folded into another larger bureau, doesn't mean that it's gone or we don't care. It means that, in fact, certain issues deserve to be considered part, not like some specialized, separate, segregated interest. Why shouldn't that interest be in every bureau, right? If you've got bureaus that, and for people watching at home, as I mentioned, I think in my very first briefing, that the State Department isn't just a bunch of people at a desk looking at the internet and people figuring out what it is they want to say to a world leader. There's bureaus filled with people who care about the country, the State Department, and are experts, researchers, individuals who are committed to a certain region, who understand it, who have also, though, the relationships with people in the countries in that region. And then they inform us, they do the research, they inform me for this briefing. I go onto the screen, and it's every bureau in this building that has what we call lines, which is the information about what's happening on an issue. They tell me what those things are, why it matters, et cetera. So I come here, and a great deal of what I say to you, if not most, is from the body of knowledge from the people who work in this building, who are the Foreign Service officers, the career people, the career people, the civil service officers and workers who are here. So that's how it is the government as a whole is people. It is a collection of people who've gathered to further the founder's vision, and who with each election gather to further the vision of the person who leads this government. So when we think about the nature of USAID or those other bureaus you mentioned, if a bureau is gone, that is certainly all these issues are important. It means that we're looking at certainly blending in with the regional bureaus, taking certain issues away from being specialty issues, and making sure that they're in the frameworks of the bureaus so that they can be weaved in and dealt with as a whole within all the work. Yes, of course. Please. Next, once we get to this.
I do have a follow-up on this too.
Okay, then hold it, but I'll make sure I give it to you guys. We're good.
You said earlier that you talked about some of the programs and you described them as, the aims of the programs were not in line with the aims of the country. Now, there are countries, like US has made democracy promotion a priority, but that priority actually did not go down well with some of the countries in the world. So if a country, for example, a lot of people would give the example of Hungary, I mean, US has funded some independent media organizations in Hungary. If those are in contradiction with Hungary's goals, US is no longer going to do
Well, no,
that kind
no,
of
it's
thing?
not, without, of course, speculating on what we would do in a particular country. The point is that American tax dollars that are sent as aid or to supplement something in another country deserves to be used to reflect the values and the interests of the United States, which of course is democracy and freedom around the world. I think it's safe to say that with all of our actions, certainly the Trump administration, we have made it clear that that is our priority. But also making sure that the ambassadors who are also appointed, who are representing this nation in countries and others who work at the consulates, in concert with the nation that we are working with diplomatically, that we have a coalition, if you will, on knowing how that money is being spent and making sure that the stakeholders actually have a say. I think that's fair. Some people would argue that sending money into a country, spending on something that nobody else discussed, like as USAID would do, is unfair, and that the people in the country that we're working with should have a say. But bottom line is, this now moves into something that is more accountable, more specific, easier to describe, easier to ask questions about, and easier effectively for everyone involved here at the State Department and at the embassies and consulates involved, more accessible and more transparent. All right. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up on Humara on global criminal justice, because
Sure.
there seems to be a bit of a mixed message, because on the one hand, this is clearly being eliminated from the organisational chart, but when we're pressing you on it, you're saying,
Well, it may be
these-
moved. I mean,
these
it's
roles
things
can
may,
still
if you
be-
don't see it on
can
the
be
chart,
moved.
it may be moved.
But and then the Secretary has retweeted an article which says very specifically that this is an aggressive shake-up. It will close agency offices, including those launched to further human rights, advance democracy overseas, counter extremism, and prevent war crimes. So it's just a simple question, really: is the investigation and prevention of war crimes overseas still an important piece of work and a priority for the State Department?
Democracy is always important, obviously, and again, and I understand the tendency. I understand the tendency. War crimes, again, for me, being here now, we're approaching about 100 days. My deciding to do this is based on this nation's history, and it clearly is committed to the nature of the values of the American people and of this country. And just because, and this is why I think it's difficult to do, you've seen a bureau dedicated just to that, just because it has been folded into a different bureau or is an element underneath a different kind of office, and that particular bureau that was maybe specialized, which could be implemented in a better, more nimble, faster way, especially when we're talking about war crimes and things immediately that are moving on the ground. This is the kind of adjustment and reorganization that makes it better. And this will always be the argument. This will be seen. But it is, of course, those values that you know are American values remain. And while the approach or the bureaus or an office might be called something differently or even eliminated as an office, but is moved through the bureau as a whole, you'll see that the American approach to the world not only remains the same, but will be more obvious, more clear, more dynamic, and more active.
Do you know where will that role move to? Because it's very hard to see in the chart, for example, on war crimes or global criminal justice, where that will now exist.
Well, but again, this is a roadmap. It is a plan. This is something that in this process, and there's a process in this government, where there may be certain things that change. And there'll be a point where we're talking about implementation. So those details, this gives you, I think, a very good idea, transparently for everyone who's watching this, that this is a change. It is, the issue is certainly, sometimes we all know that change is difficult. But in this particular case, it had to happen because of the bulk, because of the unsustainability of the size of the government. And that's why we're doing it. All right, yes, sir.
Thank you, Tammy. Two questions. I know this came up on different settings. Just want to make sure.
It's the same issue.
Yes, to get you on the record that this will not impact whatsoever when it comes to the department's reports on different issues like human rights, which appears to be
Well,
delayed.
no, I can't, I'm not going to speculate on whatsoever impact on how a report is issued, when it's issued, the content of the report, the nature of how our discussing human rights is done. I will not, all of that would require speculation here, beyond, I think, the reorganization report.
And my second question, I know that I can say a spokesperson's role will be promoted, congratulations on that, but I want to understand with the GEC, closure of GEC recently.
GEC,
Global
yes.
Engagement Center.
Yes, no,
And-
that's a very
and
good
also-
question, yeah.
And also, eliminating some of the fundings, like, grants to Moldova to fight against
Well-
the Russian disinformation. Is the issue of Russian disinformation or Chinese disinformation, is this something that you are concerned about, or are you out of business of combating?
Well, it's obvious that everyone's concerned about interference in elections. None of us want that, but of course, the specifics of how a reorganizational roadmap is not going to, I'm not going to be able to answer the question about how that would be affected, of course. And your other question was?
Chinese and Russian disinformation.
No, there was a different one.
And your office will be promoted.
Well, it's yeah, and this is, I think, again, a bit in the weeds for the people at home. I mean, there's an organizational chart. My office is now answerable to the secretary, which, of course, all of you probably already presume that, if that's true. But now, technically, it sits within that umbrella. So nothing has really changed in that regard, except it's a little bit more specific and obvious when it comes to the nature of my work.
Can we come back to Leto in Ukraine?
Well, forgive me, I'm going to move on. I was also going to answer your first question, which
GEC.
The GEC. Thank you. He remembered. In fact, that's a good question because things beyond this roadmap will also happen. That bureau has been eliminated. Things will change in the State Department separate from this roadmap. That bureau, which had been ordered to be removed last fall, what they did is they changed its name and moved people around. And so that, of course, by eliminating that bureau at $50 million a year, perfect example, that worked to censor the American public. That is not certainly the vision of the Trump administration or the American people who put him in office. So yes, that bureau is gone. It is really gone this time, and the American people are better off for it.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Yes, of course you can.
On this process.
Yes.
There's an internal State Department memo that was put out about this that said that the undersecretaries are going to be submitting a path to reduce domestic staff by 15%. Can you just help us understand how the leadership in charge of this reorg came up with the 15% number, and if there's any wiggle room there, or if
well, I said this is an internal document. I'm not going to speak on something that you may or may. I'm not going to presume you didn't see something, so forgive me. But I'm not going to speak on the specifics of something like that. But the undersecretaries do have a role here. Because this is, again, not from on high things being swept away with one of those large yard brooms. This is a very specific dynamic brought to the undersecretaries who have daily operational experience. I see you. Keep your hand down, please. I'm sorry. It's a little distracting. These are undersecretaries who are working daily with the people in this building, who work in this building, who know what's being produced, who know what has to happen, and they are best suited to make a determination when it comes to this roadmap about how to apply the nature of what we want to accomplish. So the undersecretaries are directly involved, and they will, I think they'll have about 30 days to make their own plan in this framework. And then, of course, we'll see how that manifests in the meantime.
And then just one quick question.
Sure.
Was DOJ involved at all on this plan, or was this just a State Department proposal?
No, this, I think, is a very good example of the importance. We know the American people love the result of DOJ. I think there were some questions, perhaps, about how it was applied. But what we do know is that the DOJ approach, the goal of that entity and of that committee is something the president appreciated and still does, as do the American people very much. But when, I believe, the president said a few weeks ago that ultimately this was going to be an approach that the secretaries were going to begin to apply. And also that does make sense, because whether it's the secretaries or the undersecretaries or the people running the offices, it is the daily work of individuals committed to the country, making a difference for the world. And the people on the ground working together know best about how this works, what could change, and how it should change. So this is, I think, a very good example of the continuation of that mission and the value of that mission to cut government down to size, get people used to the idea that it can happen without it being a bad thing, and then watching the benefits that flow. So secretaries now in charge of this. Remember, this is from an executive order. This is a whole of government, every department looking at how they can make their department more efficient, less burdensome, less bureaucratic. This is the State Department's version of that. I would say that that DOJ is not in charge of this, but this is the result of what we've learned and the fact that we appreciate the results, and we want more of those results, and it is now in the hands of the secretaries as well. All right. All right, Sean.
Can I switch topics?
All right, now are we done here? So we should switch to some other important topics. We have, as a matter of fact, one of my rules is, of course, our friend Caroline Levitt will be starting in about 10 to 15 minutes. I've started earlier here because of the nature of the issues, but there are some other issues on our plate. Shall we start with some other ones at this point?
Sure.
Sean, go ahead. You were first.
Sure. Not that I'm not interested
Yes.
in reorganization. Could I ask you, Russia said today that, or Russian state media said that Special Envoy Witkoff will be on his way to Moscow. Is that something you can confirm? And if so, could you explain the natures of his discussions this time?
I can't confirm that, no.
Cannot.
I cannot.
Is it incorrect, or is it just...
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, that is, yeah, that's not something I can speak to.
Okay. Could I ask you about the Secretary's schedule?
Sure.
Just, if I'm not mistaken, you were on Fox earlier this morning, and you mentioned some, the potential of travel.
Sure.
Could you just explain his
Yes.
travel schedule?
You know, there's normally when we have travel scheduled, you guys get an announcement, and there was no announcement. And I was asked, and I had known that this was possible, and had mentioned it, presuming it would happen. As we know, Secretary Rubio is a busy man. He is one of the most active, if not the most active, Secretary of State I think we've had. And that, of course, affects every day for him. And so when there's certain plans, they're, conditional. And in this particular instance, while the meetings in London are still occurring, he will not be attending. But that is not a statement regarding the meetings. It's a statement about logistical issues in his schedule.
Can you confirm who will participate from the U.S.?
Well, I do know, yes, that General Kellogg is there. And so he will be having those conversations. So we look forward to hearing back from him about whether or not we've had some success in London.
Just briefly for me.
I'm sorry? All right. You know what? That is another issue, and I will get back to you in a moment. But we've had several other people who've been waiting to deal with that. But let me, I think that's all I can say to you about London at this point.
Just briefly, the Secretary on Friday said that essentially that we're going to see within days whether it's his exact words, whether it's possible to go forward with negotiating an end to the war. Is that something that General Kellogg is going to be looking at now? Is this really the time?
Well, what we all look to is President Trump's approach. President Trump has expressed optimism about what's possible. And of course, he has great envoys and a great Secretary of State who's been moving through to determine if that is in fact the case. President Trump wants this to be solved diplomatically. Obviously, he does not, and does not believe, like when it comes to certainly Ukraine and Russia, they've said multiple times, both of the Secretary and the President have said that this cannot be won militarily. And so they want diplomacy to work. The Secretary said a few weeks ago at NATO that it was a few weeks where we would determine as we look to Russia based on their actions, not their words. And of course now a few weeks have gone by and we are in London, and I think it's about what will be reported, which we will know soon. But then that is also the good news about being the Secretary of State, is that he is the one who sees everything, can make the assessment of everything that's on the ground. And of course, in partnership with the President, who is the visionary and the decider, that will make a determination about whether or not peace is possible. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, is claiming that he no longer has a visa to travel to the United States. Can you confirm that report and explain the justification?
if he's right or not?
Well, I can't do that. Of course, we don't speak about direct individual visa issues. Visa records are confidential for everyone. But we are aware of the reports. We're aware of what he said. What I can say is that our two countries have had opportunities to create a brighter future for our citizens through efforts aimed at targeting violent drug cartels that are now poisoning our citizens and destabilizing our region, creating economic opportunities that advance prosperity, and ending the regional crisis of illegal immigration. So that's what I know about our two countries. His comments are not something that I'll remark on. All right, yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question about the Iranian talks.
I'm sorry, about the
Iranian talks. Do you have
Yes.
any updates about the third round with the Iranian, and how do you see the Iranian engagement with Russia and China when they are updating them and talking and meeting with them about the negotiations that they have with you? And will there be the next round direct talks with them, or it's indirect still?
Well, again, these are diplomatic missions. I know I speak often. I have to say no to you when it comes to the questions you ask because you're looking for some details, I understand, about the nature of what may or may not happen in an issue that the world cares about. But if it involves, of course, negotiations, diplomatic considerations, diplomatic conversations here between American leaders, I'm not going to remark on that. As far as what might be next, I have nothing new to report to you at this point. All right. Yes?
Sammy. The Diplomatic Security Service says it's been assisting the Virginia Homeland Security Task Force in arresting undocumented migrants and some people who are connected to transnational gangs. I wonder if you could say more about the decision to have DSS jump in there and whether you expect this collaboration to be ongoing and if there's any concern that this will detract from the original mission.
Well, good question, if that's accurate. And so I need to check. We'll take that back and I'll get back to you on that. And your question is going to be the last one because we are just a few minutes to 1 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. We will have, I do want to let you know also for Thursday, my principal deputy, Tommy Piggott, will be briefing you for the first time. So that will be fun on Thursday. It's very, very exciting time. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, guys, there you have it. U.S. Department of State spokesperson Tammy Bruce. After a number of rumors and speculation, the State Department now launching a major reorganization of its operations. That is actually official. The U.S. Department of State spokesperson stated that no one will be fired, that they have laid out a roadmap, if you will, and it has been planned for quite some time, and that a congressional notice has been sent as well. We are now awaiting a press conference at the White House. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt due to approach that podium you see right there on your screen sometime shortly after 1 p.m. We'll take our first break and we'll be right back.
Sophia the cat, you saw that? Yeah, I was bummed because I got here like 30 minutes later, so I didn't get to meet her. Saw the pictures. I like to think our adversaries are like, all right, we
camera on a cat or something.
All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Oh my gosh, she's back in a major way, and shall we say she's cooling it. Brittany Alexandra. Can you get the fan, please?
First of all, Guy, good to see you. Oh, also goes with the flashlight. We're still learning. We're still learning this new gadget.
So a week ago you joined us, and you
Yes.
sat here, and yeah, I remember it was pretty
And
hot.
I was burning up and sweating and dripping while talking about getting ghosted or ghosting people. I mean, the trigger, the 2 and 2.
Oh,
So today I
gosh.
came prepared with my
I
hair.
love it.
We're ready to go. It's a vibe, right?
Oh, yeah, it is
yes,
a vibe. Matter
yes.
of fact, when we finish this segment, let me know where you got it. 'Cause
Yes,
I
I
need
will.
it as well.
Amazon. Where you get everything, right?
We call
Anyways,
this-
good to see you.
Good to
and we're
see you
cool
as
and
well.
refreshed today on a
Very
Tuesday.
much so. We're always cool when you're here. I guarantee you
This
that.
is true.
We call this the Tuesday Talkers, some of the stories that you guys and gals are talking about at home. We're going to kick it off with this one. Well, quite honestly, all 3 stories I find very interesting. Relax. It's okay not to immediately respond to text messages. That according to an etiquette and manners expert who states that, come on, guys and gals, you got a lot of stuff going on in the world. So if someone texts you, you don't have to immediately text back. That's because if they respect you, they should understand that you too perhaps have something going on. What do you say to that?
Respect the text.
There you
I
go.
like that. I agree with this for sure. I used to be the one that would like text back right away, but then over time, I understand how people say they're so busy or they reply in their head and they forget to text back. I'm now that person where I'll see a text and I'll reply in my head and then I didn't text back for 3 days later. So, okay, 3 days might be a long time.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's no rush to text people back right away. People are busy. If it's something really important and you need to text back right away, then just double text,
Yeah.
right? I mean, good old double text
I'm
will
with
do the
that as
job.
well. I think technology now, it shows as to whether or not someone has actually read your text.
Yes, this
and
is
so
true.
I feel guilty knowing that if someone texts me and then I don't respond, but they could clearly
Do
see
you
that
have your read receipts on? Because I sure
I
do not.
I do, yeah. And sometimes,
Okay.
but I'm
so
busy.
Yeah, that is bad, okay? People that have read receipts need to have some etiquette, okay? Don't open the text unless you're going to read it and reply because I will feel some type of way if you read my text
so
and then
what
reply.
if I texted you, so which I did this morning, and I
Yes.
said, hey, you're going to be here. I
Yes.
would love to have you on the show. And then what if you waited a half hour because you were trying to work out as to whether or not you were going to be able to stay? See?
True. Okay. I got what you're saying. Okay, Guy, you got that one, okay? Just say you're a horrible texter.
Okay, that's what I'll do. I suck. Speaking of etiquette, let's move on to airplane etiquette because I don't know why we have this conversation time and time again.
Because people don't know how to act on the plane.
You're daggone right about that in a major way. You want to get away? Not if you're acting a fool. In this case, another, shall we say, airplane etiquette expert now talking about several things you should not do. It is not okay to play your music loud and or the show you're watching on the airplane. Don't put your feet up on the armrest of the person in front of you. And don't drape your hair over the back of your seat and block my screen. You want to add anything to that?
I definitely like the don't put your feet up. Cover your mouth when you're coughing or sneezing.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
you think it's so simple, and you know, nowadays we're not wearing masks as much on the plane, but I still freak out when somebody's like sneezing right next to me or even behind me because germs spread. So that would be one. The feet one is serious. Do not kick, you know, the back of the seat or have your feet up and you feel that push on the back. But those are really pretty good. If you gotta pass the gas, go to the bathroom. Would you agree with that one? Have you ever been on a plane when somebody let off literally one of those?
Well, that was me.
Keeping it real, I love it. Let me get my fan. It got hot here again all of a sudden.
But, I mean, they didn't know. What do they call it? Silent but deadly? We'll keep it like that. I'm just playing because I know somebody's watching right away. I knew Guy did it.
The loud ones don't have the smell. The silent ones, those are the deadly ones for sure. Yes, you're right.
We got about 3 minutes left, and I really wanted to touch on this one. And it's just so funny because to you, I think you brought this up last week, and that is DC happens to be capital of getting ghosted. Not just America, but getting ghosted.
Yeah.
And so now we know what you should not do if one happens to be ghosted yet again, according to a relationship expert. How many experts do we have on the show today? In this case, the thing that you should not do is look for closure and or seek closure. Let it go. Just
Yeah.
end it and move on. Do you
I
agree?
mean, that action should make it very clear that there's nothing else to say, right? I think people, you know what's funny about closure? People feel like they need closure from the other person, but really it's about finding closure with yourself and whatever situation you just went through. So I completely agree with that. Like, let the healing begin. You don't always need closure from the other person. Sometimes it's closure within the heart. So I agree with that. I mean, if somebody ghosted you, they're definitely ready to move on and be done, or whatever the situation may be. They're not rocking with you right now.
Yeah.
So they will reach back out if they're ready to reach back out. And ladies, when you're a good one, they always come back around.
You know what? I'm guilty
Like
of that
Drake
too.
said, the good ones go if you wait too long, okay? Okay?
Wow, you're dropping some knowledge here.
Yes,
Brittany,
I'm
tell
going to
you.
always keep you hip to the culture, okay?
Well, thank you. Let me let you go before I need to pass gas.
Let me get my fan. At least we got that, right? Spread it that way. Good to see you guys.
Well, Brittany Alexandra with all things as we call the Tuesday Talkers right here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you.
Always good to see
All
you.
right, guys. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
They'll take a 2% raise. It's gonna be interesting because I like having my box
No, I'm serious.
my personal phone is I've got another good My new favorite ones is I put it on for this just but at nighttime that's true. Now we're talking.
That's what I'm saying.
But you can still, customize it. You can still right. You can like pick people that can override it. Yeah. Sorry, Dad. Sorry, Mom. They live in Stafford, an hour south of here almost, and on traffic. Yeah, I grew up there. A lot of people go places. Some people stay. They go crazy.
All right, guys, welcome back to Fox 5 Live Zone. So, by a show of hands, did you know that 1 in 5 employees balances their job with caregiving responsibilities? But wait, there's more, or as we like to say, there's a catch. Only 35% of workplaces are truly meeting their needs. You see, according to a new report from SHRM, which is a member-driven catalyst for creating better workplaces where people and businesses thrive together, we can now see how the lack of support impacts working caregivers. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Dr. Emily Dickens. Dr. Dickens is the Chief of Staff, Head of Government Affairs, and Corporate Secretary for SHRM, and kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Dr. Dickens, truly a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, I appreciate it, but I'm not a doctor yet, but I'm going to claim it. How you doing today?
Well, I guess what? I just gave you the honor, so for this segment, you're doctor. And then some. Ms. Dickens, it is so important for us to really think about each and everything we do with regard to those we care for. You incorporate the workplace, the job, and you think so many times that they would lend support in order for us to do just that, but, well, as we've seen for these numbers, that's not necessarily the case.
It's not. And let me tell you, part of the problem is there's a stigma attached to being a caregiver. There's a large percentage of people who believe that if they were to identify as a caregiver, that would impact their career growth. And we see that in the study. And so here are some ways that I think we can do a better job of this. Number one, I think if you're a leader in the workplace or a people manager and you're a caregiver, share your story. When your employees hear you telling your story and how you're integrating that work, because there's no balance here, balancing the caregiving with work, it is really integrating that caregiving into work. When they realize that they see their executives do it, and they find themselves with their new normal of being a caregiver, then they will lean into you and tell you, because if they don't tell you, you don't know it's an issue and you don't know it's something that you need to help them with.
Is it all about empathy? Is that the key word here, the employer having empathy for the employee?
You know, it's a little bigger than that. It's about empathy. It's about productivity. It's about long-term retention. It's about acquisition. So empathy, yes, we're being asked to make sure, because it could be us, right? So we're being asked to try to understand better what the employee is going through. But we also want to retain employees. There are a lot of jobs out there with openings, and there are a lot of people, and we don't have enough people in those jobs. So if I've got a good person, what can I do to maintain productivity within my organization and to maintain that person as a part of my organization? That's going to save you, because the cost to acquire new talent is much more than the cost to retain talent. So it's important that you look at what are the business needs as well as the employee needs. So yes, on the employee side, it's about empathy, but on the employer side, it's about good business sense. You want to make sure you retain people who've been good with and for your business.
What's the #1 complaint from employees, out of curiosity, with regard to this?
Yeah, it's the stigma, actually. It's the stigma attached to it. They feel that there's 42% of them think that this will impact their career growth, because the assumption is once my boss knows that I have these additional responsibilities, then they're not going to look to me for opportunity. And it's an assumption that the boss wouldn't be supportive of them. And so many begin looking for jobs that provide more flexibility, but maybe don't pay as much or provide the career growth. And so the biggest piece is getting over that stigma, which can be easily done with communication. So important that our leaders talk about it and that employees tell you, because now HR can do something about it. Here's where HR, knowing that they have a bigger percentage of people in their workplace that have caregiving responsibilities, can look for benefit packages and resources that they can include so that they can help their employees who are going through this.
I try to provide solutions, I should say, and we try to do that on this show. I've been told so many times, Guy, you should listen. You shouldn't try to fix everything. But, well, yet again, I'm hoping we can at least attempt to fix this. So, from an employee standpoint, the first thing he or she should do in order to bring about change, and then from an employer standpoint, what should we expect from employers?
So I'm going to say, #1, share your story. If I don't know, when you're pregnant and you show up with the belly, I have an issue. I know that there's something going on that's going to cut into your time. If you're ill and I see that you're going through treatments, I understand something's going on. I have no idea that the employee is struggling with caregiving responsibilities unless you tell me. So 1, share your story for employees. For employers, the biggest thing is to listen to your people and to ask questions. You don't necessarily have to ask people personal questions, but when you're talking to your employees, what are you dealing with now? What's your biggest concern? I think it's important to have a listening ear, because that's going to give you information you didn't have before and a better understanding of what could be interfering with your employees' productivity, with their mental health and wellness, and with their full employee experience.
Wow. Couldn't put it any better. Yet again, we have been speaking with Emily Dickens. She is the Chief of Staff, Head of Government Affairs, and Corporate Secretary for SHRM, as I like to call her. She is Dr. Dickens, and kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Truly appreciate your commentary and your knowledge surrounding all of this.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, taking you now live to the White House, where White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt approaching the podium for the White House press briefing.
And prayers of the entire White House remain with all of the Catholics around the world who are mourning the death of Pope Francis. Pope Francis touched millions of lives and dedicated his life to serving the Catholic Church. As a mark of respect for his memory, President Trump ordered flags be flown at half-staff, and he will be traveling to attend his funeral in Rome. The president will depart from Washington on Friday morning and return to the United States on Saturday evening following the funeral service. I can also confirm the dates of the president's trip to the Middle East. He will travel to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates from May 13th until May 16th. And on Thursday of this week, President Trump will welcome Norwegian Prime Minister at the White House for a working visit. The two leaders will discuss trade and regional security. This will be the 13th head of state visit of President Trump's term already. At the border, President Trump continues to deliver on his promise to make America safe again. The Wall Street Journal captured the Trump effect in a recent article. Border crossings grind to a halt as Trump's tough policies take hold. U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded its lowest southwest border crossings in history in March, and we're seeing the same successes at our northern border. Here's how the New York Post put it. Northern border sector previously overrun by illegal migrants sees dramatic drop in crossings. We haven't seen anyone since November, end quote. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, just 54 illegal aliens were apprehended in the Swanton sector of our northern border, which stretches more than 300 miles in March. This is a drastic 95% drop from the more than 1,000 border crossings that were caught in March 2024. This is a main hotspot area that recorded more than 80% of all apprehensions along the northern border during the 2024 fiscal year. And new reporting from the Washington Times fully highlights the difference in Joe Biden's disgraceful approach to the border compared to President Trump's. Under Trump, border catch and release has dropped 99.99% from worst Biden month. You can't get much better than that. This statistic in particular is astounding. Border Patrol agents caught and immediately released 189,604 illegal aliens into the United States in December 2023 at the height of the Biden border crisis. But under President Trump, Border Patrol agents caught and released only 20 illegal aliens into the U.S. in the month of February. Thanks to President Trump, operational control of the border is becoming a reality, and the administration's historic enforcement measures are yielding huge results. Illegal aliens are finally getting the blunt message. If you cross the border illegally, you will be swiftly deported and never return to the United States of America. Efforts to arrest the criminal illegal alien invaders are continuing to ramp up. ICE Chicago arrested a Mexican national convicted of predatory sexual assault of a child in Cook County, Illinois. This week, ICE Denver arrested a Mexican national convicted of sexual assault of a child in Houston County, Texas. ICE Miami arrested a Nicaraguan convicted of aggravated battery in Hillsborough County, Florida. ICE Houston arrested a Salvadorian national convicted of attempted sexual assault of a child in Escape in Dallas County, Texas. And ICE Chicago arrested a Mexican national convicted of aggravated sexual abuse of a minor in Illinois. Despite the Democrats' insane objections, President Trump will continue to embolden law enforcement officers to arrest dangerous legal alien criminals and keep our communities safe. And also thanks to President Trump's America First economic approach, investments continue to pour into our country. Swiss pharmaceuticals company announced they will be investing $50 billion in the United States over the next 5 years, creating 12,000 new quality jobs. Regeneron Pharmaceuticals also agreed to pay Fujifilm Technologies more than $3 billion over the next decade to help manufacture its medicines in the United States. It's a top priority for President Trump to ensure we are producing critical medicines and pharmaceutical drugs right here in America, and that is exactly what we continue to see happen every day. In other news, the Trump administration has announced we will put an end to Joe Biden's illegal student loan bailout attempts. No student loan has been referred to collection since March of 2020. That comes to an end. On May 5th, the Department of Education will resume involuntary collections for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. The student loan portfolio controlled by the federal government is nearly $1.6 trillion, but fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers are in repayment. This is unsustainable, unfair, and a huge liability for American taxpayers. Debt cannot be wiped away. It just ends up getting transferred to others. So why should Americans who didn't go to college or went to college and responsibly paid back their loans pay for the student loans of other Americans? The Trump administration will never force taxpayers to pay student loan debts that don't belong to them. Student loan borrowers need clarity, and we're finally giving it to them. Borrowers will now be clearly expected to repay their loans, and those who default on their loan obligations will face involuntary collections. The government can and will collect defaulted federal student loan debt by withholding money from borrowers, tax refunds, federal pensions, and even their wages. America is $36 trillion in debt. We must get our fiscal house in order and restore common sense to our country. If you take out a loan, you have to pay it back. It's very simple. President Trump will not kick the can down the road anymore. Before we open it up to questions today, I want to commend our pool photographer who is in the room with us today. ABC News photojournalist Melissa Young is retiring after 44 incredible years on the job, covering here at the White House. congratulations. You have the largest round of applause I've ever heard in this room. So there's something we can all agree on, and you've had an incredible career here covering the White House. So congratulations to you, and we hope you enjoy retirement. I'm sure you will. And everybody else in the room will be very jealous of you as you're enjoying your rest. All right, let's get to it. We have an individual in our new media seat today. His name is Tim Pool. He's a political commentator and a media entrepreneur with millions of followers, a very big platform. Currently hosts Timcast IRL, a daily news and discussions show, and The Culture War, a weekly podcast exploring cultural and political issues. His programs feature in-depth conversations on topics such as free speech, censorship, identity politics, and societal change, often engaging with a diverse range of guests. He's in Washington today because we are also hosting a local media row across the street in the Eisenhower building, which is a testament to our commitment to bring new voices into the White House to cover the president and this administration. So Tim, why don't you kick us off today?
Yes, many of the news organizations that are represented in this room have marched in lockstep on false narratives, such as the Very Fine People hoax, the Covington smear, and now what's being called the Maryland Man hoax, where an MS-13 gang member adjudicated by 2 different judges, I believe, is just simply being referred to as a Maryland Man over and over again. Now, in an effort from the White House to expand access to new companies, you've created this new media seat. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, following this expansion, you've had numerous outlets disparage the companies that you've had sit here, as well as the reporters. I'm wondering if you could comment on that unprofessional behavior, as well as elaborate if there's any plans to expand access to new companies.
Sure. Well, we certainly welcome diverse viewpoints in this room, which is one of the reasons we have you in here, and there's many new faces in this room in comparison to the previous administrations. We want to welcome all viewpoints into this room. We welcome unbiased journalists who really care about the truth and the facts and the accuracy, and you rightfully pointed out the Maryland Man story, which I, from this podium, when The Atlantic published it, on that very first day, I came to this podium and said, this is wrong. The press in this room have this story wrong, and we have seen more and more evidence come to the table that we have had all along. We were always right. The president was always on the right side of this issue to deport this illegal criminal from our community. And it is despicable to see the media continue to refer to this individual as someone who is just a peaceful man living his life in Maryland. This was and always has been an illegal criminal, an MS-13 gang member, and a designated foreign terrorist. And the administration maintains our position to deport these individuals from our community. So thank you for being here, Tim. It's great to see you. Thank you. Dasha, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. I have 2 questions, one on the Pentagon and another on the economy. You said on Fox News that the entire Pentagon is working against Secretary Hegseth, but the people who were fired were Hegseth's own guys. So how do you square that, and what do you say to concerns that that's bad management?
They were Pentagon employees who leaked against their boss to news agencies in this room. And it's been clear since day one from this administration that we are not going to tolerate individuals who leak to the mainstream media, particularly when it comes to sensitive information. And the Secretary of Defense is doing a tremendous job, and he is bringing monumental change to the Pentagon. And there's a lot of people in this city who reject monumental change, and I think, frankly, that's why we've seen a smear campaign against the Secretary of Defense since the moment that President Trump announced his nomination before the United States Senate. Let me reiterate, the president stands strongly behind Secretary Hegseth in the change that he is bringing to the Pentagon, and the results that he's achieved thus far speak for themselves.
Is there an FBI investigation into the leaks? The secretary said that these people would be prosecuted, so is the FBI investigating?
You'd have to ask the FBI, you have to ask the Department of Justice on what they plan to do, but certainly we take leaks with the utmost seriously across this administration. You've seen people fired from the Department of Homeland Security. The president has made it clear it's an unacceptable behavior.
On the economy, Caroline, Peter Navarro said that it's perfectly possible to do 90 deals in 90 days. We haven't seen one just yet. How soon might we see a deal, and what evidence can you share that progress is being made in these trade negotiations?
Sure. Well, I spoke to our entire trade team this morning. There is a lot of progress being made. We now have 18 proposals on paper that have been brought to the trade team. Again, these are proposals on paper that countries have proposed to the Trump administration and to our government. You have Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Ambassador Greer, NEC Director Hassett, and Peter Navarro, the entire trade team, meeting with 34 countries this week alone. We are moving at Trump speed to ensure these deals are made on behalf of the American worker and the American people. And just yesterday, it seemed to get a little bit lost in the news, and I think it's a disservice to the American public that it did. The Vice President announced terms of reference for a trade deal with India. That is a big deal. We know when we look at the numbers, the monetary trade barriers and the non-monetary trade barriers from India, they have been ripping off the United States and American workers for a very long time. So the fact that the Vice President with Prime Minister Modi on that trip in India announced these terms of reference, which is essentially a framework to move the ball forward to sign a good trade deal between our two nations, is great progress, and it speaks to the work ethic and the real labor that's being put into this effort by the President's trade team. Sure. Go ahead.
Does the proposals that you talk about, is that enough to extend the pauses on these reciprocal tariffs, or does the President need to see, these deals inked and signed to offer any sort of additional extension beyond the 90 days?
Well, look, ask me in July when the deadline hits. I know I'll be answering those questions from all of you in this room. There's a lot of time left, and the President's trade team is working, again, at Trump speed as quickly as they can to ensure that these deals can be made.
Are any of those conversations yet with China happening?
I actually do have something to share on that. I asked the President about this before coming out here, and he wanted me to share with all of you that we're doing very well in respect to a potential trade deal with China. As I mentioned, there have now been 18 proposals in more than 100 countries around the world who are wanting to make a deal with the United States of America, and the President and the administration are setting the stage for a deal with China. So we feel everyone involved wants to see a trade deal happen, and the ball is moving in the right direction. Sure.
Setting the stage for a deal with China, what does that mean? Has the President spoken directly with Xi yet?
I don't have anything to read out on a direct talk between the President and President Xi, but we will continue to keep you updated.
And Secretary Bessent reportedly today told investors that this trade standoff with China he expects will be de-escalating soon because, as he described it, reportedly the situation is unsustainable. Is the President considering taking steps to de-escalate the situation with China?
Again, I just read you words directly from the President of the United States. Those are moments ago. That's where his head is at right now.
Caroline.
Sure.
Caroline, I have two questions, one on immigration and one on China. First on immigration. Roughly how many illegal immigrants and aliens do we have in our country, and how many does the administration plan on deporting?
Sure. Well, you'd have to ask the Department of Homeland Security for a specific number, but we suspect it's definitely in the millions, perhaps upwards of 20 million people that were allowed into the country illegally by the previous administration. And the President and his team are focused on deporting as many as we possibly can, and they are moving as quickly as possible. The President's team has made it clear we need more funding from Congress to do more. We need more ICE agents out on the ground doing this very important work. And we also need rogue district court judges to stop acting as judicial activists, trying to block the administration from deporting illegal criminals from our nation's interior. The American public elected the President to do this, and he's following through with that promise.
And we have over 250,000 Chinese nationals in our country right now on student visas. Does the administration believe there's any national security concern when it comes to those over 250,000 Chinese nationals in our country?
Well, as you know, when it comes to foreign visas, the Secretary of State has the right to revoke visas of those who we feel are acting in a adversarial way to our foreign policy interests here in the United States. He has that authority according to the Immigration and Nationality Act. So I would defer you to the State Department for any individual case, but they are looking at individuals who are given the privilege of being on a visa in our country, and if they are acting, again, adversarial to our foreign policy interests, their visa can be revoked, and they should be aware of that. Sure. Go ahead. Yes. I'm calling on you.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
Over the last few weeks, several countries have warned their citizens about travel to the U.S., and the Department of Commerce's own stats know that from a lot of countries, the number of visitors is falling. Does the White House have any message for people that might be reconsidering business or tourism travel to the U.S.?
Where did you see that report?
With the statistics coming from the Department of Commerce.
Said what? It's hard to hear you. Sorry.
That visitors from a lot of countries have fallen in the from a lot of countries have fallen in the last 3 months?
I'd have to look at that report to comment on the merits of it. I think most people around the world recognize the United States of America is a great place to do business. It's a beautiful place to visit, and they should certainly come here because it's a much safer country than it was 4 years ago under the previous president. Libby, good to see you.
A question about this upcoming announcement from HHS to ban food dyes. During the first week of the administration, the FDA announced that it's pulling its plan to ban menthol cigarettes. So 2 questions for you. How do you square a ban on menthol cigarettes being pulled and then announcing this ban on food dyes? And then how does the president feel about this upcoming ban that's that RFK is going to announce?
Sure. Well, look, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the president nominated him because he trusts him to make this country healthy again. It's not just a slogan. It really is a movement that has broken ground across the country. There's millions of people who believe in RFK Jr., Secretary Kennedy, and what he's doing. I don't want to get ahead of HHS with this historic announcement later and the details of it, but obviously the Secretary feels that he has reason and evidence to announce the ban on artificial dyes later, and I'll let him speak to that this afternoon. Phil.
The president started the process of reclassifying more than 50,000 federal employees as Schedule F. We've already seen him march through a number of government agencies. I'm curious, should we expect mass firings, or is this a case-by-case approach, a scalpel or a sledgehammer?
Well, look, as you saw on Friday, the president put out a statement about it. The Office of Personnel Management reclassified workers. They're now called Scheduled Policy/Career. And all the president is trying to do is ensure that federal workers are being held accountable for corrupt behavior. If they are engaging in corruption as a government worker, they should no longer have their job. I think that's pretty common sense. He also believes that bureaucrats should be acting in accordance to the will of the American public, who duly elected this president. Not just this president, but all future presidents. If you work for the government, you should be adhering to the will of the American public and advancing the administration's goals and interests. And if you are not doing that, then you should go find another job whose interests you align with. So as for specific firings, I would defer you to the specific agencies, but the president in this move and Office of Personnel Management, it will make it easier to get rid of rogue bureaucrats who are engaging in corruption.
And then another quick question about
Sure.
Google, real quick. A federal court ruled last Thursday that Google's dominance of online advertising and ad tech markets violated U.S. antitrust laws. I know the president has spoken to a number of folks in big tech, and Google CEO was even at his inauguration. I'm curious, what is the president's reaction to that court ruling?
I'll have to ask him, and I'll get back to you, Phil. Thank you, Caroline. You're welcome. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Some economic questions for you. Kevin Hassett has been a key economic advisor to the president in both of his terms. In 2022...
And he still is.
And he still is.
He was just in my office.
Absolutely. In 2022, he said that the independence of the Fed is super important. That's a direct quote. Is that something that the president subscribes to? Does he still believe in the independence of the Federal Reserve?
Well, look, I think the president has made his position on the Fed and on Powell quite clear. The president believes that they have been making moves and taking action in the name of politics rather in the name of what's right for the American economy. The president has the right to express his displeasure with the Fed, and he has the right to say he believes interest rates should be lower. He believes Americans should be able to borrow money cheaper than they currently are right now. And I also spoke to Kevin Hassett about the Fed as well, and he has called into question the Fed's independence and whether they are actually doing things, again, out of the best interest of the economy, or are they doing it for partisan reasons. The president wants to see interest rates lower. He has made that quite clear.
We've also seen, if I may, I'm sorry, one more, Caroline, just about, I said 2 economic questions, about the dollar. We've seen the dollar at multi-year lows versus the euro and other currencies around the world. Is it the administration's policy for a strong dollar? How does it view the dollar versus other currencies around the world?
The president wants to see the dollar remain as the world's reserve currency for our long-term fiscal stability and our economic growth. He's been quite clear about that. Sure.
2 questions.
And then to the woman behind you, who I haven't seen before, welcome. Go ahead, Mary.
Earth Day and then the Supreme Court, if that's okay.
That's right. It's Earth Day.
Yes.
Happy Earth Day, everyone.
I saw the president truthing about the garbage pileup from China in the Pacific, and then I believe Lee Zeldin is headed to San Diego to investigate the pile of sewage from Mexico. Can you speak to what the White House has planned for Earth Day and anything in that arena?
Sure. I do have points from the EPA. Administrator Zeldin's doing a fantastic job, and they are always sharing their accomplishments with the White House, which we very much appreciate. He will be traveling. I believe he's in California today for sewage situation. Here you go. Administrator Zeldin met with his Mexican counterpart to discuss steps Mexico needs to take to ensure the water entering the United States is clean and safe. And he's holding a press conference in San Diego today with elected officials and local stakeholders on the Tijuana River sewage crisis. I would also add from the president himself, he has always maintained he wants America to have the cleanest air and the cleanest water. And we want to do what's right for our environment and for our earth. And a lot of that is making sure that we have clean and sustainable energy, and we know that we produce natural gas cleaner and more efficiently than any country in this world, and the president wants to see that continue.
Thank you. And then on the Supreme Court, I know the court is hearing a case dealing with parents who don't want their kids having to read gender ideology books in schools. Can you comment on that case and what the Trump administration hopes to see come from that?
Sure. We hope the Supreme Court will do the right thing, and the president has been very clear. He stands on the side of parental rights, and he believes strongly that parents should have a greater say in their children's education and the content, if you will, that children are being exposed to in our public school system. Sure. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you.
Hi.
I'm Carolina Lumetta with World News Group. The administration ended some temporary protections for Afghans, including several hundred Christians who have been punished by the Taliban. Is the president considering any exceptions for Afghans who could face death or torture if they return to their home country?
So let's just be clear about one thing. We didn't end that proactively. It expired, and it's because the previous administration illegally paroled millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people, I'm sorry, into the country, and then gave them temporary protective status, which again is a temporary status. It's not a permanent status in this country. And if there are individuals here who came in through the Biden administration who want to claim asylum, there is a legal process to do that, and those cases will be adjudicated by a judge on a case-by-case basis. We have a legal immigration process in this country for a reason, and all this administration is trying to do is effectuate that. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. I have 2 questions for you
Sure.
on immigration. March deportation numbers were down slightly from the same time period last year. SCOTUS recently ordered a pause on deporting Trinidad Tobago members with the Alien Enemies Act. I'm curious what other tools the administration is looking at to boost those deportation numbers.
Sure. Well, we are obviously complying with the court's order. However, it was a temporary pause. The Supreme Court basically said, sit tight, and they will follow up with an order, and we're confident that the Supreme Court will rule on the side of law and recognize the president absolutely has the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists from our nation's interior under the Alien Enemies Act. We feel very strongly about that, and we're confident the courts will side with the president and his executive authority. As for deportations, we continue to deport illegal criminals under Title VIII, which is an immigration authority given to our Border Patrol agents and the Department of Homeland Security to deport illegal criminals from this country. And the administration continues to do that at record speed as quickly as they can with the resources that they have.
They recently dropped charges against the MS-13 leader caught in Woodbridge, Virginia, with the idea that this will expedite the deportation process. Does the administration plan to drop charges against other criminal illegals to speed along the deportation process?
You'd have to ask the Department of Justice. Obviously, that's within their purview, and I can't speak for them. However, it is our goal to deport as many illegal criminals and aliens from our country as we possibly can, as quickly as we can. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. We've heard so much about this Saudi trip planning, and the president's mentioned it himself before, but I don't think we've ever heard on the record what he hopes to achieve in Saudi Arabia and what the purpose of the trip is.
Sure. Well, the president looks forward to this. It was supposed to be his first foreign visit, but of course now he is going to Rome this weekend to honor the Pope and attend the funeral. The president looks to strengthen the ties between the United States and these countries in which he will be visiting. He'll be having many bilateral meetings and talks, and we look forward to the trip and hope to see many of you there.
And the meetings in London this week, do they have any nexus with the plans in Saudi Arabia?
I can't speak to that. However, I do have an update on meetings when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. I was just in the Oval Office with the President, Steve Witkoff, and they wanted everybody to know that the negotiations continue. We feel, again, we're hopefully moving in the right direction, and the Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, will be heading to Russia again later this week to continue talks with Vladimir Putin.
Is that why Rubio is not heading to London? Is he accompanying Witkoff to Moscow?
I can't speak for the Secretary of State's travel travel schedule, I'd defer you to the Department of State.
And then more broadly, just about the peace agreement, the talks that are ongoing. Rubio had said, Secretary Rubio had said that if things don't go the right way, that the U.S. might need to take a step back. What does stepping back look like? Is that a step back from brokering peace, or would that imply a broader withdrawal from U.S. support for Ukraine and the war?
Look, I think it would be unwise for me to broadcast that from this podium. Ultimately, that's a decision for the president to make, but he's made it very clear he wants to see peace, he wants to see this war end, and he wants to stop the killing on both sides of this war, and he's been very clear about that for quite some time, and he has grown frustrated with both sides of this war, and he's made that very known. Brian.
Thank you, Caroline. Last week, the president talked about nonprofit groups, specifically taking on crew, and he hinted that there could be further actions taken against nonprofits. Does the White House have any plans for any sort of actions against NGOs, nonprofits, or other similar groups? Is any of that coming up? Is that being worked on at this time?
I'll have to check in with our policy team and get back to you. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. Travis Gilmore with the Epoch Times. Are some colleges using taxpayer funds to further political agendas? And what is the administration's response to Harvard's lawsuit?
Sure. Well, the president has made it quite clear that it's Harvard who has put themselves in the position to lose their own funding by not obeying federal law. And we expect all colleges and universities who are receiving taxpayer funds to abide by federal law. It's quite simple. And the president made it clear he's not going to tolerate violations of federal law. He's not going to tolerate illegal harassment and violence towards Jewish American students or students of any faith on our campuses across the country. And so we will be responding to the lawsuit in court. And again, it's quite simple. If you want federal dollars, obey federal law.
And just to quickly follow up on
Sure.
China, any response to reports that China is targeting U.S. trade allies with potential retaliatory measures for supporting U.S. agendas?
I think the numbers and the sheer number of countries that have reached out to the United States and reached out to this administration to cut good trade deals speak for themselves. The entire world knows that they need the United States of America and they want to do business here, and so we'll stay focused on cutting good trade deals on behalf of the American worker. Stephanie.
Thank you, Carolyn. Can you give us any additional details from the president's call with Netanyahu today?
I did speak to the president about it. It was a good call. They spoke particularly about Iran and the negotiations that are underway with Iran and the United States. And the president has made it very clear repeatedly, but I'll reiterate, there is no daylight between the United States of America and the state of Israel. He stands strongly behind our ally. He's made it quite clear when it comes to Iran that we want to see a deal, and Iran has a choice to make. But the president has also made it very clear, and he reiterated that in his call with Prime Minister Netanyahu today about the need for Iran to never obtain a nuclear weapon. I do have one more bit of news that I would like to share with all of you. Just give me 1 second to find it. And it's in regards to the terrorist attack that took place in India earlier today. The president has been briefed by the National Security Advisor, and he's being kept up to speed as more facts are learned. What we know already is dozens were killed and even more were injured in a brutal terrorist attack in a popular tourist location in South Kashmir. President Trump will be speaking with Prime Minister Modi as soon as he possibly can to express his heartfelt condolences for those lost. And our prayers are with those injured and our nation's support for our ally India. These types of horrific events by terrorists are why those of us who work for peace and stability in the world continue our mission. So we'll give you a readout of that call later this afternoon. There's a lot of work to be had. You may hear from the president later this afternoon as well, and we'll see you all later. Thank you.
All right, guys, there you have it. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt discussing a number of things. In specific, she made mention of the Secretary of Defense, saying Pete Hegseth is now the victim of a smear campaign, and the president stands behind him. She also stated that Trump is very close to striking a deal with China, and the president and First Lady do plan to attend the Pope's funeral in Rome, which is set to get underway this upcoming Saturday. The White House press secretary, right before exiting, stated the president may have an announcement to make sometime later this afternoon as well. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. So following this show, we have the show known as The Take. I'm going to watch that when I get off today. Then I'm going to watch the DMV Zone. Then I'm going to watch the 4. You see where I'm going with this? At some point today, I'm going to get a chance to sit down and watch the brand new Season 2 of Andor. You can check that out on Disney+. Our own Kevin McCarthy got a chance to sit down with some of the cast.
But if I'm giving up everything, I want to win. We have to. We must stand together. We will be crushed.
Resistance is absurd.
It's a weapon. They're building a weapon.
I'm just curious, as you now enter into a life post this show, the perspective that your characters have given you on your own lives and this idea of risking everything for what you stand for and what you believe in. I'm just curious, as now you walk through your lives as yourselves, what will you take with you from them? Do you miss them?
I think you kind of you said it a little bit, you know, to stand up for what you believe in, and especially for me, I started in a very different place. I think in my career when I first started Bix, and I think through Bix and through this whole experience, I've sort of felt like I've had a voice, you know, and I've learned that through Bix and through Bix's strengths and through the challenges that this character goes through. I'm also going through challenges as an actor, right? And trying to make every scene worthwhile or to do this character justice. You know, I had never been given the opportunity of these challenges, so I think learning through Bix was probably my best gift. And yeah, I mean, standing up for what you believe, and also working in community, which is very much like working on this show. You know, it was a full collaboration, and it felt like a community, not only with actors, with director, with Tony, with hair, with makeup, with costume. You know, it felt like this community, and we were all coming together for the one thing that we all had in common, which was to make the best version of this show possible. So I think art sort of mimics life sometimes in a really fun
And Diego,
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, I think I was thinking that it's a benefit of having the second answer.
Are you gonna copy me?
No, I'm gonna copy you.
I
No.
keep copying him, so it's okay.
No, I was thinking because it's we're telling the story of these characters, of 5 years in the life of these characters, and telling this story took 5 years of our lives, you know, and I think it's a sense of that time matters, you know, like the change, the arc these characters go through in 5 years is dramatic. They find a reason, you know, to exist. They find a reason to fight for. They understand they belong to a community. They build those very strong connections that make Cassian sacrifice everything for that family, you know, in a moment. Therefore, 5 years matter, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I am thinking about what am I going to be doing my next 5 years, because it rather matter or I'll feel I've lost an opportunity, you know? Cassian builds a beautiful relation with Biggs in a year, the year we don't see, you know? A relation that is crucial for him to understand that change is possible and, more important, needed, you know, because he finds love. Anyway, I'm just thinking about that. 5 years in the life of someone, you know, that idea.
Season 2, yet again, of Andor, now currently on Disney+. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. How about we drop it like it's hot? Weather-wise, Tucker Barnes joining
here
us
we
right
go.
here on the Live Zone. I heard you making reference to that song earlier today, my friend.
I did, and I was recalling my glory days when that song was fresh. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
how's the weekend?
It was good. How was yours?
Yes, it was great. Easter weekend.
Uh-huh.
Spent it with my wife's family, and
There you go.
There's a lot of energy over there.
Okay.
Can't keep up.
Well, I'm sure you dropped it like it's hot.
Tried to. Felt like it was hot. All right, it's going to feel like it's hot this afternoon, too, as we're warming up again. Low 80s this afternoon. And we will be talking about dry conditions. So don't worry about your rain for your Tuesday afternoon. In fact, probably no rain until the end of the week, maybe by Friday into Saturday. We'll start to get some showers back in the region. 75 for your early afternoon hours, 72 Dulles. Clouds being reported, well, partly cloudy skies being reported across the region. Had a frontal system that was working through the region. In fact, it still is working through the region. I'll show it to you here on the satellite. And it will bring us some occasional cloud cover. So showers mostly down at the beaches, down even south of Ocean City at this hour, and will continue to fade off and away from our area later this afternoon and over the next 12 hours. So see the clouds out to the west, out in the mountains. Some of those will sneak across, and will be partly sunny this afternoon. But 10 degrees above average temperature-wise, and dry. The exception to an otherwise really nice weather pattern, pollen has been very high for trees. So later this afternoon when you're out and about, I want you to go find an oak tree or a sycamore tree or a birch tree and blame them, because they're the main guys that are causing the issues right now. Okay, looking down the road, I mentioned quiet conditions. Wednesday we look great. Thursday we look good. By Friday we'll get more clouds, and we probably will have some showers at some point Friday into Saturday. So that will be our time frame for our next chance for some rain. Temps over the next 6 to 10, 8 to 14 days look to be above normal. Our average high is 70.
Oh, wow.
So could we say our first 90 of the year?
Could we?
Maybe next week.
Huh.
Maybe next week. We have some high 80s in the forecast by the middle of next week. The next 7 days, all above average, with the exception of Sunday and Monday, which is close to average. So we'll keep it generally on the warmer side of things next couple days. Rain there Friday into Saturday, but 81 this afternoon.
Man, I'm absolutely loving this.
Good.
Can we just put this on repeat, like forever?
Well, we pretty much will until September, October.
Okay.
Only, you know, we're going to continue to turn up the drop it like it's hot.
I love it. All right, Tucker Barnes with all things weather right here on the Live Zone. Guys, please make sure you download the Fox Local app. That way, that hot forecast, you can take it with you any and everywhere you go. Speaking of hot, Like It or Not comes on at 7 o'clock each and every night. Do you like that?
It's a good one. I'm going to start using it.
It's Cecilia, by the way, producer for Like It or Not, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Good to see you back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we got about 3 minutes, and I got 3 things I didn't get to. First of all, Tucker said when we were in commercial break, Guy, I watched Like It or Not last night. I'm like, really?
Thank you.
Yeah, isn't that cool? He's like, then
Tucker,
I watched
how
the
are you
Caps game.
awake?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
The
as well.
Caps game?
Well, he said he switched from us to the Caps game, and that's when I yelled at him. So.
Yeah, no, that's not okay, but we appreciate the initial effort.
Yeah. Hi, Marina. Marina's getting ready for to do the take in just about 3.5 minutes right here on Fox 5. Real quick, we have a couple of stories that we're going to focus on tonight on Like It or Not, one of which happens to be standardized gambling.
Yes. I'm actually glad that you started with that one because that's going to be our poll question tonight. So we'll discuss, but please go to fox5dc.com/lion and you can cast your vote and let us know if you like it or not. So currently around the United States, the gambling age is anywhere from 18 to 21.
Okay.
And they're finding that most 18-year-olds are either high school seniors or college freshmen, and they're getting super into online poker, and it's leading to gambling addiction for these 18-year-olds. Now, when I read that, I was first surprised because when I was 18, what money did I have to be getting into like these depths of online poker? But second of all, I was thinking, well, should we just standardize it to 21 to help these kids develop their brains a little more? Or they're 18, they're adults. Let them do what they want. Who cares where they got their money? Mind your business.
It's going to be a hot topic for sure.
I don't know.
One of many topics we're going to discuss tonight, or not me, but you and the crew. Also, ejecting parents from, let's say, kids' baseball games and kiddo games, if you will, little league games.
So when I was a kid playing sports, I do remember some parents getting a little more into it than others. But it seems like in the last few years, 69% of referees have reported that it's getting ridiculous with the parents and what they're doing. Some throwing stones at referees, verbally berating them, things like that.
We don't condone violence, by the way.
We don't. But what is the line between, you know, hey, that was a bad call, ref, and violence?
Yeah, I wonder if alcohol has anything to do with
At
it.
the kids' games?
Well, I have been made privy, or okay, I was there, where several parents were, let's say, just enjoying a couple of adult beverages.
Tailgating at kids' games. Maybe, I don't know. They say it's because there's so much pressure on the kids these days that now the pressure is going to the parents as well. I don't know if that's an excuse, but...
Oh, I can't wait to check it out tonight. Do we know our panel as yet?
Yes, it's going to be Jim Loke, Marina Morocco, Angie Goff, and Tony P and DC joining us.
I love Tony P.
It'll be a good
I love
one.
everybody, but
Yes.
Tony P, that's my guy.
It'll be good.
I saw him real quick because I got like 1 minute to kill. I saw him at a recent event. It was the kickoff to, I think, Angie's Bar, which, by the way, guys, it's a great bar. We got to put them on Like It or Not.
Okay,
They're doing
yeah.
all things New York style here in DC.
Ooh.
And I just found it really interesting because I walk in and I see all these cameras flashing, and I thought it was for me, but no, it's for Tony P.
You were in the background though, guy.
I definitely was. Yet again, Like It or Not, coming up tonight at 7 o'clock right here on Fox 5. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll see you then.
All right. That just about does it for us. On behalf of my producer, Emmy, I'm Guy Lambert. She's Cecilia. You'll see her again tonight at 7 o'clock. This, though, is called The Live Zone. We do it each and every Monday through Friday, 12 to 2. Tell a friend, bring a friend, and we'll do it all again. Marina, the woman I was waving to just a minute ago who was running to the studio, she's coming up next. The name of that show, The Take, right here on Fox 5.